Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Behind the Stripes football webcast. Happy holidays, Dave.
Happy holidays, Joe. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. This will be our last podcast before the Independence Bowl, so we're going to look a little more closely at the matchups. First of all, how do you think Missouri matches up against North Carolina?
Well, North Carolina runs an offense unlike anything Missouri sees in the Big 12. There's really no spread formations. The quarterback doesn't run the ball at all, so there's none of the zone read stuff. I asked Missouri's defense coordinator, Dave Steckel, about that the other day, and he said there's really nothing to compare it to. A little bit of Texas A&M, but North Carolina's quarterback does not leave the pocket unless he's scrambling. I think he's got negative 100 rushing yards on the season. So I think they match up pretty well with how Missouri plays well against defensively. They're good at stopping the run when there's only one guy to worry about back there. They're fairly physical up front. So I think that favors them. But you look back at the last team that kind of played this style that Missouri played against was Iowa in the bowl game last year, and the teams are built very much the same way. And Iowa's offensive line, their running game was way too much for Missouri that night. So maybe it's not a great matchup. But they've got a really big offensive line, a freshman running back, Giovanni Bernard, 1,200-yard rusher, one of the best in the ACC. His older brother, you probably remember Juvenson Bernard for Oregon State a few years ago in the Sun Bowl. Their quarterback is a young guy, Bren Renner. Not great numbers, but very efficient. He doesn't throw the ball very often, but when he does, they usually throw it downfield a lot. Typical pro-style offense that's not a dink-and-dunk type spread system. So, they haven't had great success this year, but offensively they're okay. It'll be kind of a different matchup for Missouri. Defensively, very good against the run. I think they'll give Missouri some challenges when Missouri tries to run the ball. Very big up front, and they've got a really good All-American type NFL defensive end. Quentin Copel's his name, a really big guy. Looks more like a defensive tackle.
They've got some decent wins. They beat Rutgers, Virginia, Wake Forest, and Louisville. Those are all bowl teams. And, they don't really have a terrible loss either, so I think it's probably seems like a fairly even matchup. They are going in this game, obviously, with an interim coach who's on his way to Ohio State as a coordinator. Withers. The last time Missouri dealt with that situation was in the Cotton Bowl against Arkansas, and Arkansas really looked like a team that didn't care to be there. I don't know if you think that's going to have any effect on the preparation.
It could. North Carolina's just a program itself has dealt with so much off-the-field stuff the last 2 years or so with the NCAA investigations a year ago. Butch Davis, their head coach, losing his job right before the season started. So they've dealt with a lot of stuff. And like you said, they've had some decent wins. But I don't know what it's like in the last couple of weeks there. Missouri, on the other hand, they started preparing for North Carolina stuff a lot earlier than they normally do during bowl season. So maybe they do come in a little bit better idea of what they're going to face and a little bit more, just prepared for the actual game.
All right. Missouri uses the bowl practices not only to get ready for North Carolina, but also to take a look at some of the guys who have been redshirting this year. Just your thoughts of amongst that group, who might be able to contribute next year?
It's not a very big class, and there weren't many guys that jumped out in August as guys who could maybe contribute this past season. But Shane Ray is a guy that you notice right away. He's a defensive end, a skinnier guy, but somebody who's got a lot of speed and quickness off the edge. Kind of reminds you a little bit of a Brian Smith, and he was a great player, obviously, so he's got a lot to live up to if he's going to compare to him. But it's kind of the same mold. And that's still kind of a deep position for Missouri next year. They only lose Jacquez Smith, so they've got a lot of guys in the rotation, but I think he can factor in. And then you look at some linebackers and safeties. Cortland Browning is a safety who could have a shot. Kentrell Brothers is a linebacker who got hurt and missed the whole season as far as practices go with a broken leg. But he's back out there now and able to go through practices, kind of an athletic outside linebacker type. So, those are just a few guys. You don't see a lot that really jump out at you. And this team will have some decent depth as far as experience goes coming back next year, so that there's not a lot of guys they really need to play right away either.
Doesn't seem like this is going to be a group that's going to lose a lot early to the draft either. Do you think anybody?
No, there's a few guys that actually went through the process of the paperwork doing that, but that Missouri kind of encourages players to do that just to kind of get some feedback and then maybe uses motivation a little bit. I know that Sheldon Richardson went through that process. Brad Madison, Kip Edwards, TJ Moe, and really the coaches tell them to do it and go ahead. But I don't think any of them are in danger of leaving.
All right, and lastly, Missouri doesn't replace many coaches, but they will this time. Barry Odom, the safeties coach, leaves to take the defensive coordinator job at Memphis. Hasn't been made official yet, but Coach Gary Pinkel is going to hire Grinch, Alex Grinch, his nephew from Wyoming, from Dave Christensen's staff. Just your thoughts on that hire?
Kind of a curious hire. I mean, if Missouri has an opening a year before they're going to the SEC, you kind of figure or maybe expect Gary to go after somebody with a little bit of SEC experience just for the recruiting angle, but didn't go that way. And Alex Grinch has coached at Missouri as a graduate assistant almost 10 years ago. He coached at New Hampshire for a few years, and he's been with Dave Christensen out at Wyoming. So really, he has more college coaching experience now than Barry Odom had when Missouri hired Barry, and no one really thought that was a bad hire. So he comes in with some okay experience. Wyoming's defense, their secondary has gotten better each year that he was there. He's been a guy that's recruited Texas pretty well for Wyoming. They signed 9 guys out of Texas just this past year, and that was his focus. The Dallas area and the same area that Missouri focuses with its recruiting on. So there's a plus there. But the obvious thing that people kind of latch onto is the fact that he is Gary's nephew. Mm-hmm. He's the son of Gary's older sister. I don't know if that played as much role in him getting hired as the fact that he was here for 3 years as a GA, was well respected, and he knows the system, he knows the program, there's familiarity there, so they don't have to teach him any of that stuff. I kind of want to believe that that's more of the reason than the fact that he's related to Gary. But I think also the timing was a factor too. Instead of Pinkel going to the coaches convention next month and having to interview a bunch of candidates, they want to get somebody on board right away who could seamlessly move in and help them finish out recruiting for this coming class. Because Barry Odom was really integral in a lot of the commitments that they had lined up already, especially kids from Texas. So they didn't want to have to lose any time at all in the lapse without having a guy in that position. And Alex can come in. He was already here at Sunday night's practice the day after Wyoming's bowl game, and you could tell he was visiting with the other assistant coaches, visiting with Pinkel, and kind of reacquainting himself to the place.
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably work out fine. The only thing that will give you pause is that after this move to the SEC, Pinkel was kind of banging his fist on the table, talking to fans, wanting to raise money by saying, this is our shot. This can't be business as usual. If we're going to do this, we got to do it right. And then you have an opening, and instead of maybe scouring the Southeast or, maybe who are the best assistants in the Conference USA or Sun Belt who have experience down there, it's like, I'm going to go hire my nephew.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think from a PR standpoint at least, I don't think it comes off real great that, is this business as usual if you're just hiring your nephew now.
And one thing that kind of works against that thought, too, is the fact that they did get Josh Henson a couple years ago to leave a pretty good job at LSU to join Missouri's staff, and it made it seem like, that's pretty easy to do, and it's not. Josh was kind of an unusual case. He wanted to coach offensive linemen. Les Miles was about to have a purge of his staff, and Josh's responsibilities were going to get shifted around a little bit. So he was looking to leave. You don't see a lot of coaches necessarily at Alabama or Auburn or Florida that want to get out of there and go be the safeties coach at Missouri. So that was going to be difficult to do. But like you said, maybe some other schools from other conferences down there in that Conference USA or the Sun Belt, you could have maybe talked to somebody down there. But I think that probably would have gone on longer, taken longer than Gary wanted to do in this case.
And also almost everybody east of Mississippi recruits Florida, so there's tons of people out there with recruiting experience there. But appears to be done.
Yeah.
So join us next week when we will wrap up the season, discuss Missouri's bowl game against North Carolina, and maybe do a brief preview of what we can expect in spring football.